Not sure. Okay.
Peace and love, everyone. It's Dulcinea.
Hello, Daughters of the Sea here.
What it is? It's Saturday. Hey y'all, welcome to the show. Take your shoes off, relax, get you something to eat and a nice little drink. We're gonna talk about something that's for real, for real. I'm Nisha.
Come through with the come through. I love the introduction.
Hey, peace and love, family. It's CharisetheRealist. Hello. Peace and love. Sister Freedom, Big Mama in the house. Welcome, everybody, to Unscrambled Minds.
Yes, ma'am. Mickey, let's go shot. Sweet Pepper. Hey, girl, we miss you. Mickey.
Hey, girl.
Anthony, girly
girl, sweet
girl. What's up, girl?
Anthony Williams,
Girl, sweet Pepper. Yay.
Engine number 9, John Batista.
Yes.
Peace, everyone. So we're going to talk about this hot topic that's happening right now with David Eltis. It seems like a lot of people want to interview him now, and everybody's talking about it. So we're just going to talk a little bit about that today, Slave Voyages, and just get into some information. But before we start, Charise, tell us a little bit of like the interview and how you felt about it.
You know what? I felt like overall, it was a good interview, and there was some things that I wish I would have got in there that kind of slipped my radar and things like that. My goal was ultimately to try to talk about some of the misconceptions behind the slave trade, and ultimately just trying to get a cohesive understanding on where this information is coming from and how are we coming to certain conclusions. And, that was for me just trying to take, pieces from his work and things that he has stated and just trying to basically get him to kind of explain those things. So, I mean, overall, I think it went really well. I think it was super professional and I'm really proud of myself. I was a nervous wreck, but it really, I really am proud of the way that it came out. And, we got to like 35 minutes. I was getting ready to shut it down, but he's like, no, ask me more questions and things. So, I felt like it was going good, and hopefully, I could get them back and we can answer some of those questions that I did not get a chance to ask.
Oh, that sounds good.
What's some of the questions you feel like you wish you had asked?
So in one of his works in particular, more in particular, the Transatlantic slave trade, the assessment, that particular article, and I don't even know how I missed this, but at the beginning of the article, it clearly states that in 1992, there was more Africans who came into the United States than the entire slave trade era combined. And I meant to kind of get that in there and ask him about that a little bit more, kind of just expound on that and where he was able to come up with that conclusion, because what we see is a lot of he had a lot of wheeze. So when he's saying we, in my mind, maybe he's referring to his academia and his team and the people who helped him work on not only his books, but SaveVoyages.org as well. And I think that, to me, I think I kind of missed it right there, like by not getting him to kind of expound on that just a little bit more, because I think, to me, in my opinion, that kind of puts the slave trade narrative in limbo when you make a statement like that. So I kind of wanted to hear him, I wish I would have got that in there for sure.
So let me ask you a question. He don't feel like the slave trade is what we have been taught throughout our lifetime.
He actually made a statement that the 1619 story is extremely erroneous. So actually, in his book, he made a statement that it was a prior landing that occurred in Puerto Rico more than like a century earlier. So there's a lot of assertions being made, right? But I think the biggest thing is that certain things are erroneous around the slave trade and what we've been taught, for sure. So I mean, he didn't outright say it wasn't true or anything like that, but I know he said that some of the things that we have learned has been a misinterpretation and has been erroneous in terms of K through 12 academia and what we've learned about it.
Yeah, that's right. Dulcie.
Yeah.
Do you don't forget to drop the clips in the private chat so we can share when you're ready.
I just had a conversation with someone concerning the same thing, Cherise, pretty much saying the same thing. It could not have happened the way that it happened. And like I'm gonna always say, from Atlantic City to Delaware, I didn't go to school with no Africans. So we are in the mindset, like those millions of so-called Africans that came over on the so-called slave trade was over here in America. That totally wouldn't make no sense to me, especially, like I said, I work in the healthcare industry, and I know for a fact it just couldn't happen the way that they're stating that it happened. Now, I don't know if he got into anything physical or not, but physically, I can't see how that happened. I mean, even now, if you sit on a hard, stool or whatever, you can't sit on it but for so long. You're going to want to get up, all kinds of stuff. It just couldn't have happened like that. Not laying down on some hard, it was a 90-day trip. 90 days up, 90 days back, chained up, laying on a hard environment. You're sick. Oh, no. No.
To your point, Sister Freedom, there was definitely a part in our conversation, and I don't know if Dulcie got it clipped up or not, but there was a point in our conversation where I discussed that with him and asked him about that and why the pushback on the slave trade, for us is real, because the idea that someone is under a deck for upwards of 3 months, like you just said, chained together, defecating on each other, peeing on each other, different things like that. I think his main response was that, he's making it seem like that this is something that was plausible and that, yes, the conditions were horrible and different things like that, but this is something that was plausible. Like I tried to get him to talk a little bit more about the technology and how these boats were able to sustain these people. Because I told, even using myself, I'm 5'7", with some good weight on me. So it's like, how is this happening in this manner? I didn't expect for him to say certain things, because I know that he's still a part of a particular academia. So like their narrative is to continue to push this regardless, So it's like I didn't expect him to say certain things, but I do wish I would have pushed him a little bit more to kind of open up about how certain things could be plausible you know, and that's why, yeah, I mean, you're right, Sister Freedom. I mean, it definitely came up for sure.
Yeah, because it would have had to come up with somebody who's calling themselves an expert, or you writing a book. I mean, that would be one of the main things that I would put in the book about how physically impossible it would have been. You know what I mean? So it just wouldn't have been people just trying to kill their own self by you know, throwing their bodies over or whatever, over the boat, whatever. Physically, they would have been so sick and their bodies would have been broke down so bad. Once you got over here, the people who's you supposed to be working for would have had to take care of you until you was able to work for them. And who does that?
What I
I was trying to find the timestamp for that. I put in the link in the back. Do you know where that is, Charisse?
It's hard to hear you, Dulcie.
Yeah, I'm driving, so
Yeah.
that's why. Really
Well, you know what I can do? If it's easier, I can just share the. Do you want me to share the interview with Charisse, or were you trying to share something else? Because I can just go to her page and share it.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, I can put the link of the interview in the back. Her interview.
Oh, okay. So you want me to? All right. So let's start with that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there was a multitude of questions, y'all, that I think you guys would appreciate. And I think the audience probably would appreciate too, you know, and we could probably just go through it a little bit, you know, listen to the question, listen to them answer, then, you know, get that feedback that way, or we could just look for certain time steps, however way y'all want to do it. I mean, I wish I would have prepared a little bit to kind of have certain things stamped off for y'all, and I apologize for that, ladies.
No, but Charisse, did you ask him why was he interested in even doing this?
For sure.
Yeah, he's going to explain that when we play the video. We're going to play the video, and then we can always stop through it, or you can, if you or Dulcie remember the timestamp, just like put it in the back chat, and then I'll speed it up to that part. Okay, but I can at least play some snippets of it.
Sure. All right.
Okay, here we go. Oh, what did I just do? Sorry, y'all.
Useful in the context of the Caribbean. A relatively small population could.
Firstly, Professor Eltis, one of the first articles that I presented to the people who subscribe to my channel and follow me is your article entitled "The U.S. Transatlantic Slave Trade, 1644 to 1867, an Assessment." In my studies of history and learning about who I am identity-wise, there has been a lot of what I will call pushback on what we know as the transatlantic slave trade. And, you know, I just want to ask you just some brief questions from that particular, just maybe one or two questions from that particular article. In that article, I noticed that you referenced the 9th census of the United States, which indicates that less than 0.1% of the quote Black population was African born. So how does this statistic inform our understanding of the demographics of enslaved people in the United States?
Yes, the slave trade to the U.S. was much smaller than people realize, I think. And in fact, staggeringly small when you consider that at the point of the Civil War, there were close to 4 million African Americans living in the country. And the question, of course, arises, how come that number was so great if the actual number of arrivals was probably less than 400,000? And the US is indeed exceptional in the Americas in that kind of scenario. And it has a lot to do with the somewhat more favorable environment in North America compared to the Caribbean and parts of South America, for that matter. So that, in fact, a relatively small population could, in fact, expand quite rapidly over the period of 2 or 3 centuries. So I think step number one is to recognize that the slave trade to the US was actually quite small compared to what was happening elsewhere.
Awesome. And since that actually segues right into my next question, in your work, you discuss the relatively low numbers of enslaved individuals who initially arrived on the North American mainland, compared to those in other regions. Do you think that it's plausible that many Black Americans today could trace their ancestry back to individuals who were already present in the Americas prior to the transatlantic slave trade?
Of course, it's difficult because one of the horrors of the slave trade was that people's identity was essentially seriously compromised, if not wiped out, so that the African name, which individuals have when they arrived, simply has not survived. It's particularly sad because we've actually now got information on the ethno-linguistic origins of Africans. And this is quite useful in the context of the Caribbean and actually in parts of South America too. But it's just not helpful for those who are seeking connections, as indeed most people do, with their ancestors. It's almost as though the slave trade created a wall, which it's very hard to cross. There are some individuals, of course, where it is possible to do this, but it's really quite small compared to what we can do with, say, Africans arriving in Cuba or several other parts of the Americas.
I asked this because I know in my study of history and, what I've come. That's where, for me, it's kind of weird almost, because it's kind of like, we can always depend on these numbers, but we can never really depend on anything tangible that actually there or puts us to these people that they are claiming came here and that made who we were. And it's just a real funky situation we in with this slave trade narrative.
I agree with the man.
It's like if you bring up some pretty valid, questions, if you will, right? So like if there's room for that and you're like, okay, wait, this is not making sense, right? Like, it's so many little Swiss cheese holes, right? In the story, and it's almost a feeling like you've been bamboozled. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I remember us talking about this months ago. Y'all remember that conversation? When I think it was like that brother who said he had dual citizenship in some African country. Remember that, y'all?
Yes.
Yeah. That came up and all that. That was, yeah. So look, we talked about that, like some of the statistics and the numbers and how they fluctuate. And I have wanted to show y'all a quick article and see if y'all remember this, if y'all don't mind. 1 second.
But what he's saying, Charisse, what he's trying to say is discombobulated, but it was only a small amount that came over. You know what I'm saying? That the question you asked him was very pertinent. It's very important, that question that you asked him. You saying the people that are here can probably take their traits back only on these lands. It wasn't even that many, like he's saying, it's less than 1% that actually even made it over here. How could we make our ancestors go back to Africa? It's impossible. Mm-hmm. That's what he's saying. Mm-hmm. And now they mixed in with us. You know what I'm saying? They lost their identity. We didn't lose ours.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know if you guys remember that article, but it's from PBS, and how many slaves landed in the U.S., right? But it came from PBS.org. And so I'll just quickly read this paragraph in this sentence here because it ties in perfectly. It's the most comprehensive analysis of shipping records over the course of the slave trade is the Transatlantic Slave Trade Database, edited by Professors David Eltis and David Richardson. While the editors are careful to say that all of their figures are estimates, I believe that they are the best estimates that we have, the proverbial gold standard in the field of the study of the slave trade. Between 1525 and 1866, and the entire history of the slave trade to the New World, according to the Transatlantic Slave Trade Database, 12.5 million Africans were shipped to the New World. 10.7 million survived the dreaded Middle Passage, disembarking in North America, the Caribbean, and South America. And how many of these 10.7 million Africans were shipped directly to North America? Only about 388,000. That's right, a tiny percentage. So it's, and then even like those keywords of there is an estimate. That's just like a best guess, your best guess. That doesn't make it truth, right? But yet in the narrative and then the story that, you know, we have all been taught, it's always told as if it's like the gospel truth, and it's not, you know?
It's always told that's like it's millions. You know what I'm saying?
No, I was just saying that's right. Go ahead, Big Mama.
No. I was just saying that I'm so glad that we have this channel, because we are really unscrambling the minds and making people start to think.
Mm-hmm.
And that interview is very important because you asked some very important questions. You know what I'm saying? And I'm sorry that it's coming from the undone, but the truth is always, you know, the truth is you can't change the truth. And look at the dates that he's saying. And how many he was calling African Americans that was here before the slave trade, still calling, he shouldn't use that word African, because they didn't even have that word African in the 1600s. It wasn't even called Africa. You know what I'm saying? So I don't even know what they were calling it at that time. They had many names. It didn't even get to being called Africa, spreading. Remember Dulcie? Spreading until the 1800s. So, you know.
Right. That's right. And he makes note of that in his book, that they did not, or these alleged people who supposedly came here on the mainland, those 300,000, didn't identify themselves as African or Igbo or any of these things. So that's another one I missed too, that I didn't get in there.
Well, what's profound about it is that, because, you know, he is the co-publisher, pretty much the co-author, right, of that database. And that database is considered very credible, right? Like that's where people typically go to look up statistics and numbers and figures. So if you have, you know, someone you actually are interviewing and talking to the person, right, like who created that. Am I correct?
Yep.
So that's why this is more profound than anything, right? Because his work is what's being sourced, right, as credible information. And so if you have the author of that saying, you know what, it's a very low number, there's a lot of questions around that, X, Y, and Z, it just busts the whole foundation down. It breaks it down. It makes it weak.
So that leaves people that are just now starting to unscramble their minds to think, like, what are we then? Who are we? And you know, they'll probably still be stuck with the cognitive dissonance. I mean, they're just going to be stuck right there for a minute, because this is new information to some who hasn't explored other things but the narrative.
All right, I'm going to continue to play. Here we go.
To find out is that a lot of us were already here prior to certain things taking place. And I find it very interesting with the slave trade, because I feel as though I think that what happens is a lot of times there is a significant emphasis on quantitative data and statistics over qualitative statistics. So do you think that there's a margin of error for quantitative over qualitative data? And if so, what would that margin of error be?
I would think, in terms of what we've got,
Got to scratching his head, y'all.
That our numbers are fairly rigorous. They're fairly strong. And in fact, you mentioned the Slave Voyages website, which of course contains records of 36,000 separate slaving voyages. And we think that that probably constitutes about 80 to 90% of all slave voyages that ever took place. And we're fairly confident about that. Several ways of testing it, but basically I think our estimates stand to be widely recognized. So the margin of error is certainly there, but I don't think it's going to I don't think it's conceivable that we have it drastically wrong.
Okay. So I have one more question on this, and then I want to kind of move along to some questions that I had in regard to your book, because I kind of want to go. So for the audience members who may not understand the question, and I'm sure a lot of y'all probably did understand it, but for those who may not have understood that question, when I asked about quantitative data versus qualitative data, when we're talking about quantitative data, that just refers to information that can be measured and expressed numerically. So that means obviously the numbers and things that they provide on savevoyages.org and different things like that when they are ultimately discussing this. And when we're talking about qualitative data, that's just non-numerical information. So that means more so about characteristics, qualities, attributes, you know what I'm saying? Like things like that, things that we can actually see or feel, or people describing these things that are going on, versus just here's a bunch of numbers, this how many people it was, and that was that. So I do think that there was a lack of qualitative data in terms of the idea of the transatlantic slave trade over actual stories and things we can actually hold on to. So I just kind of want to explain that a little bit. But you can press play, sis.
Okay.
Wait a minute. I want to get in here. This is like one of my favorite questions that you asked, and definitely could see that he was running from really answering it, as far as the like being specific, margin of error and different things. So it's something I wanted to show you, because I kind of use this same premise when it comes to DNA. First off, like quantitative data is supposed to be based on qualitative data. Mm-hmm. So usually what you'll have is you'll have a sample size, and based on the sample sizes, that's how you can calculate your accuracy. But I want you to continue from there, because he's going to give you the sample size that they have.
Okay.
Go back to qualitative data, because I know that numbers is one thing, but actual experience is another. And for most so-called Black Americans, we can't really seem to find that true connection to this transatlantic slave trade idea. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's where the confusion comes in. I think that that's where the search for identity and the search for learning about who you are and learning who you are in the story becomes even more practical and prevalent, because we want to know who's actually experiencing these things, right? Versus, saying, hey, there was 20 million or however million, 13 million, whatever that was, that came here, and that kind of, it encompasses our whole story. Mm-hmm. Instead of us being able to really reach back and touch something, if you will, if you understand where I'm coming from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously got to be room for qualitative as well as quantitative data. But I would just add that we not only have a fairly good idea of the size of the traffic, but what's particularly relevant to the point you've just made is that we can make connections with Africa. In fact, we know basically which parts of Africa supplied forced migrants that arrived in the United States. And what we're short of, and what we're lacking, is this key element of individuals. Like, where exactly did my ancestors come from? It's of course the same for many immigrant groups into the Americas, but it's particularly, of course, significant in the slave trade case, because everyone that arrived were basically forced to come, and that adds a sort of hideous moral question, which doesn't apply to the other groups that arrived.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the pursuit of individual stories is fairly important. I know you're looking at a database which appears overwhelming, but we do have names of close to 100,000 Africans, the African names that is, and we know where they went. The hard part is making a connection with particular groups of ancestors.
Okay, pause it right here.
I guess I would just say that it's certainly better than it was 40 years ago, where we had no idea.
So you can keep it there. I think I'll be able to share the screen. Hold on. Okay. Yeah, y'all should be able to see that. So this is what I was saying. He gave you the sample size, right? He gave you 100,000 as the number. So this is kind of the thing I was using with DNA as well. So here from the National Health Institute, it talks about how many participants do you need for your research. So to make proper calculation of number of participate in a study that diminishes the likelihood of errors. So let's go down. So it's population, target population, and study population. And I can drop this in the chat. So they came to the calculation conclusion showing that by holding a sample error and significance level constant and a higher than expected prevalence, the larger will be required a sample size. However, when expected prevalence surpasses 50%, the required sample size progressively diminishes. The sample size for an expected prevalence of 10% is the same as that of an expected prevalence of 90%. So basically, that's getting into that when you're looking into accuracy of sample sizes, we want at least 10% of the participants. So I saw that he was really trying to not go into the margin of error and saying, you know, we're fairly confident, you know, we have these numbers based on this and we can back it up or different things like that. But he says that he has 100,000 narratives in his sample size. So you want to bring up math and you want to do proportions. So if you remember in school, you're going to take the 10% over 100, you're timesing that with the sample size he has of the 100,000, and you're getting the total population from that 100,000. And that would be an accurate assessment as far as to be like, we have 100,000 people. So when you do the math, you see a sample size of 100,000 would be accurate for a total population of 1 million people. So because the estimated number is 12.5 million, we're looking at a margin of error that's over 90%. Just for future reference, like if you wanted to actually calculate their margin of error.
But did he or did he not say less than 1% made it to America? Or was I hearing it wrong?
Oh, well, he's saying, yeah, that made it to the United States, less than an estimated 300,000 Africans made it to the United States of the 12.5 million Africans, and all this are his estimates. And then he's saying that from that 300,000, the Africans were able to rapidly reproduce with each other to the point that they were 4 million by the Civil War. But when you're getting into these numbers as well, like Dot said, they're estimates. So he's saying he doesn't have people. And then he admitted how many people he has, as far as that these are Africans that made it to the Americas. So of the confirmed African people that have made it to the Americas, it's 100,000. So basically, with a level of accuracy, he can only say that 100,000 represents 1 million people in total that made it to the Americas. After that, when you start adding to that 1 million total, you get more and more error. His estimations is 12.5 million. So you can just do the reverse of the math of taking the 1 million away from the 12.5 million and doing the same proportions as far as percentage wise to see the margin of error. And the margin of error is over 90% for it to be 12.5 million Africans got here based on a sample size of 100,000 Africans.
And then you got to look at what part of the U.S. You know what I mean? Is he saying all over the U.S.? Is he saying one particular part? Some particular parts? You know what I mean? Because, I mean, we all can look in our neighborhoods or think about our neighborhoods growing up. I mean, that's in my age bracket. Now, maybe in the ones that's 40 and under, they might can see more of, and they still ain't gonna see that many in their schools. They still not gonna see that many in their schools. So I don't know if the million is, I don't even know if the million is correct. They coming over Wellington.
Exactly. The million still, it depends even with sample sizes, sample sizes and statistics isn't a 100% error of accuracy what they're saying. They're saying this is a sample size as far as that makes it the most accurate as far as when we're taking a target population and we're trying to decide, does this target population like sunscreen or anything? We're taking the total population and we're saying we need at least 10% of them to have about 90% accuracy if they like sunscreen or not. But there's other variables. Okay, the 10%, are you going to one area? Are you spreading all across the United States? There's different things that make sample sizes and variables where it could still be inaccurate, even if you're doing the population. But right now, just on the fact that he says it's 100,000 people, his estimation is far higher than what 100,000 can represent.
Yeah. Oh.
And he did mention something about the ones that were already here. Right? Am I right, Charisse, to say that he mentioned the copper colored people that was already on these lands? You asked him about that.
I did ask him about the plausibility of the people who were already here prior to the transatlantic slave trade, but I feel like he kind of ran from that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
Now, should I continue playing?
We know that, what's his name? Christopher Columbus was way before the Atlantic slave trade, and he said it was.
Mm-hmm.
In his books and stuff. Go ahead, Dot. I thought I heard Dot say something.
No, I was asking if y'all ready for me to continue to play the clip. That's all.
Sure, I am.
You know? Okay, perfect.
Idea really about anything like this.
Mm-hmm. I see. Okay, so to segue into your book a little bit, the Atlantic Cataclysm family. what motivated you to take a 2,000-year perspective on the trafficking of people, and how did this long timeline shape your findings?
What I wanted to do is, in the end, establish how different the influx from Africa was. Hence the title, African Apocalypse. There is no other group, clearly, that was subject to these kinds of pressures. And it seemed to me that along with the size of the traffic, we had to do something about establishing where people came from. And I think we've done that. It's just that this argument has limitations. It falls down when we get to the level of the individual, like, who was my ancestor? And at the moment, the best we can do is indicate likelihoods of probabilities of people moving from one region in Africa to the US in particular.
Okay, so there was something interesting in your book. You challenged the commonly held belief that the first recorded landing of, quote, enslaved Africans in what is now the US occurred in Jamestown in 1619. Can you elaborate on the significance of an earlier landing in Puerto Rico and its implications for our understanding of the transatlantic slave trade?
It's not just Puerto Rico. It's you have Africans arriving with the first Spanish expedition from Cuba to the mainland in the early 16th century. So the 1619 focal point, in my view, is erroneous. We have the first documented case of African arrivals more than a century before that point. The settlements, of course, in most cases didn't last, as indeed happened with the settlements with most peoples at that time. But it's just wrong to date the interaction of Africans with the North American mainland from 1619. It had been going on before that.
I think what I find the most interesting about the slave trade and what is commonly known, which is that, you know, Jamestown is the initial start of all things slavery, all things, you know, whatever, right? And I do find that very interesting. I think that oftentimes the idea, I mean, I don't want to call it an idea, but I mean, just based off my research, I just kind of feel as though, you know, because the numbers were so low coming into the Americas, especially for this small group of, quote, Africans that comes into the mainland, which you said could be anywhere from 300 to 400,000. Is that correct?
Yeah, we think just under 400,000 arrived on slave ships.
Okay.
Across the Atlantic, yeah.
So why do you think that there is a huge wedge between, well, I guess a ratio of slave boat to plantation? I think that there's such a there's not a lot of connections between actual slave boats and plantation working. I mean, if that makes any sense, I'm trying to question it. I mean, ask you in the correct way, that why is that ratio not equal? Okay, pause it right here.
Okay, 1 second.
Well,
Before you answer, because
I'm not sure what you mean by equal, but
yeah, exactly. Oh God. So what I really wanted to know was, there is not, okay, so the amount of plantations that we see, we even see them today most of the time. We can see these representations. We see it out here in these streets, what have you, you know, but there is not an amount of plausible slave ships that can equal up to the amount of plantations that we see today. And I think that's what I was trying to come across, but I just don't think maybe the question just didn't hit like it was supposed to right here. But yeah, I have an issue only because I know for sure, like we have a ton of plantations, but we have no slave boats. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of where it was coming from and what I was trying to get out there. But you know, you could keep playing it.
Okay. I hope everyone's enjoying themselves so far. We see y'all. Don't forget to hit the like button.
It's clear that the great majority of slave vessels went to plantation areas. And originally, this was primarily the Chesapeake, but it was overtaken by Georgia and South Carolina. And the biggest influx, actually, of all happened in the late period of the slave trade. Particularly important was the Jefferson Purchase, which opened up basically the South for cotton production. So we have a very large share of Africans arriving in that period between 1804 and 1807. Mm-hmm. It's quite a short number of years, but it was a very intense slaving environment. And it was, I forget the exact ratio, but it's something like between a third and a half of all arrivals came in that very limited period between 1804 and 1807. That was when Charleston was opened up again to the slave trade.
Okay. Now, also in your book, you touch a little bit on the Portuguese being the leading slave traders rather than the British. So
the main findings. Yeah.
Like elaborate on that a little bit about some of the evidence that you might have found to support this, and you know, how does it change our perspectives about how we view the slave trade? Because
we didn't know this picture even when we went online in 2008. Mm-hmm. We just didn't realize the relative importance of the Portuguese. What drew this to our attention was the new research on what we call the inter-American slave trade. Mm-hmm. And much of this was conducted from the British Americas, where, of course, people were brought in on British slave ships. But what happened after that tends to be lost to history, at least was until we got really into the inter-American slave trade, because it turns out that there were major flows of enslaved people to not just Portuguese America, but to Spanish America. And if you allow for that subsequent movement, it turns out that over 60% of all Africans arrived via the inter-American slave trade. And in fact, the Spanish and the Portuguese together account for 60% of all people taken from Africa. It's just that point was hidden until we managed to start doing research on this so-called inter-American slave trade.
Yeah, that was actually going to be one of my next questions. So I'm kind of glad you dug into that a little bit, because my understanding of the inter-American slave trade was that
from the old South to the new South.
Yeah, that it was within the Americas, you know, going from maybe
within the U.S. specifically.
From you know, colony to colony or what have you, or other places that was here as well. Is that correct, or is that a misunderstanding?
Yeah. No, there's a much bigger traffic going from Caribbean islands like Jamaica and Barbados to Spanish America, and why that was happening is clear if you look at the economic data. It turns out that the most valuable colonies for the Europeans in the Americas were the silver and gold bearing regions and everyone's heard of the Spanish silver mines and how silver was extracted and sent to Europe. Less known is significant gold discoveries in Brazil, and this too occasioned a big influx of African Americans, of course, to do the labor necessary to extract this metal. Once you take that into account, then it turns out that the Portuguese and the Spanish colonies are actually more valuable than the colonies that Britain had in North America. There is no counterpart to the silver and gold, which you could get further south. So I think that's the key, one of the key findings in the book.
Okay. So, I also want to ask you a question about obviously public history sites and
Okay.
I think he said the colonies, but did y'all hear it? 60% of the Africans.
No, I didn't hear it. It sounded a little bit loud when he just said it.
you rewind it back a little.
Okay.
Because I know my understanding of the intra-American trade was obviously, like he said, within the United States, state to state or what have you, colony to colony or whatever was taking place at that time. And I think became more prominent, within the 18th and 19th centuries, like really after this whole transatlantic slave trade stuff. So, for them to not have prior knowledge of, people being shipped from here to there or, within our own respective homeland is really interesting. I mean, even other places in the Caribbean, like he was talking about, Jamaica and places like that. I mean, like that was very well going on. So, I mean, according to history anyway, but we know how is his story. So we know how that can be.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's a tough thing, but
But Charisse, let me ask you something. We have knowledge that it was copper colored people on the land. I just said that prior to us going back in. So what do you perceive happened to the copper colored people that was on these lands prior to the slave trade and during the slave trade? Their lands was being stolen and stuff. Do you think that I'm trying to ask you, do you think that they were enslaved right along with the Africans? Because remember, the Undone came over and invaded. You understand what I'm saying? So they pretty much caused the war.
I believe that there's definitely, I mean, what you're saying is plausible
They
for sure.
people.
Yeah, and when we talk about slavery, I think the idea is just based around these Africans or these Negroes in America, when whole time there was white people were the first slaves here, period. And I think that story is not being told due to this whole narrative that's being put in place of it, where we don't learn about, the Irish and the German, and all these other people being enslaved until most of us now. Like, I know that's
anything on that. I know you'd be posting that on the show or anything, but do you have like something that you can pull up or a link that you can put in the chat talking about the white slavery?
Oh, sure. Let me look it up now.
Right, so I was trying to what I was trying to say is that's how the mix-up is happening. You see what I'm saying? Because if you came over here and you invaded my house, my home, and then you start making, you know what I'm saying? You start enslaving the people that you captured. You just stole everything from them and everything too. So I think that's again where the mix-up is happening, because our skin color is similar to their skin color, and you're enslaving the people who you then went over and invaded and stole their land and everything from them. So it's kind of making it look like it's more, you understand what I'm saying, more Africans being enslaved, when it's really not Africans being enslaved. It's the copper colored peoples that was on these lands that they stole from, invaded, killed. They did the same thing to me over here. That they were doing to the slaves, and enslaving their own people too as well. The undone I'm talking about, the white
Did you
people.
did you want me to put the link in the back chat or put it in the chat for the audience?
You can put it in the back chat.
Okay.
What do you think about what I'm saying, Charisse?
No, absolutely. I think that that's the biggest misconception about a lot of this and what we've been told. See, we're being told what they want us to know, not the actual factual truth. Now, I know for sure a lot of people don't like Don Jordan and Mike Walsh and White Cargo. They don't like Mark Hoffman's They Were White and They Were Slaves. A lot of people would try to consider that pseudo information, but it's not pseudo when you think about it, because most of the information that they received on white slavery came directly from the Vatican. And most of us know that the Vatican has pretty much a lot of primaries there about who was coming in and what really took place. So, and I mean, this interview right here, probably, maybe like the first 5 minutes or so, probably can explain a lot about that white slavery, this idea that they were indentured and all that is straight up cap.
Yeah.
One of the extraordinary facts of investigative pursuits is that historical research has become a significant part of it for the first time. The attempts in the last 10, 15, 20 years to revisit areas which it was conveniently thought had been solved, that all questions had been answered, is now open to serious questioning. I made some notes just quickly before I came about the subjects that people have begun to look at in earnest and have done for the last while. And I say that as a way of introducing this really interesting and excellent book that opens exactly this area up for inspection. This substratum of investigative stuff really attempts to puncture illusions and fraudulent interpretations of history. The first that I came across immediately was Paul Foote. Many of you will know who he was. He was probably the largest award for investigative journalism in Britain is done in his name. And he spent a large part of his life, besides investigating all sorts of crimes and social injustices in Britain, investigating what happened to Shelley's political poetry. And he wrote an excellent book called Red Shelley, which was precisely an elegant and descriptive analysis of why his most potent and virulent material was never published. In fact, it was ignored for 80 years. He spent a lot of time looking at a curious military defeat when a huge British military detachment, set sail for Dominica to fight the Black.
The beginning of this?
Toussaint.
Huh? Is this the beginning?
We're separated in 10 days.
I don't know. Okay. Beginning. Okay.
General Mate was just devastated.
I think it's another clip, maybe.
Coming out of the jungle, nobody knew who he was, and this had to be hidden. And so the subsequent history, particularly in the Times, was wonderful. It described, as I remember this, like the defeats suffered by the Spanish and the French armies before and after. The British catastrophe had to be disguised and subverted. The stunning military victory against Leclerc and Maitland, celebrated in American and continental accounts, simply disappeared in Britain. In the British historical record, the British troops, the Times would write, became infected with mysterious illnesses and fell like flies. The entire British army, the Spanish army, and the French army were all defeated by this ragtag peasant army. Then, later on, and rather more sober note, Adam Hochschild, an American investigative journalist, the publisher of a very good magazine called Mother Jones, decided he would go after King Leopold of the Congo. And before that, very little was known about this beneficent Christian figure who spread happiness and good works throughout the Congo. We now know, compliments of Hochschild, that he killed 10 million people. It was one of the largest massacres in human history. And that was the result of an investigation of this kind. And I'll just finish it with another odd one, which is curiously old, that I.F. Stone, one of the most articulate and interesting American investigative journalists, spent his last 2 or 3 years writing a book on Socrates, an investigation of the erroneous crimes attributed to him. And it's an entertaining and good read. But tonight, this is much more interesting than I.F. Stone's, Izzy Stone's book, because this deals with something right at home. And I would introduce our two speakers. Many of you will know who they are. But for those of you who may have forgotten who they are two very distinguished colleagues from World in Action, and who both have spent many, many years in probably the finest investigative operation in this country has ever mounted. And having said all of that, I'd like to introduce them so I can tell you about this extraordinary book. Go ahead.
Well, this book began not as a book, but began as a TV documentary. This is what we thought. Its origins are Australia. I was in Australia on holiday. My wife is Australian, and I was in that wonderful institution, the Mitchell Library in Sydney. And I came across there, understandably, the Australians are kind of interested in convicts and transportation, and they have a vast collection on convicts and transportation. And I came across an astonishing book. It was very old, very obscure, and it amazed me. It told of how women were in the 18th and 17th centuries and children too, were shipped and sold in America. And I'd never heard of this. I never heard of the details. And while this only told a bit of the story, it disturbed me and encouraged me and horrified me. So I thought, great story here. And Don and I had been talking about how do we sell a story about the abolition of slavery? We've been talking about it, and we hadn't come up with anything. I came back to England with the photocopy of this book, and he will tell you what happened there.
Well, I suppose that I'm Laurel to Mike's Hardy, in that it was another fine mess he got me into. In that I read the photocopies of what he had brought back, and what he brought back was photocopies of a book written by a man called Abbott Emerson Smith, who had written about how women, mainly prostitutes, but all sorts of other people as well, who were taken out of the Bridewell prison in London in the early 1600s and sent off to the new colonies in America as brides for the planters, if you like. So these were women of marriageable age or of breeding age or whatever, who would be sent off, because up until then, of course, you had a brand new colony, it was all men. And for this to become viable, they needed women. And this seemed to be an astonishing thing. And so it went from there. And one looked at this and thought, well, this is just the tip of something. This is actually the edge of something here. And so the very fact that these women were taken out of the penal system in Britain, in England, and sent off to the new colonies, with no say for themselves about whether or not they went or not. So the interesting thing was, what was it they were going into? What was it was already there that these people could just be taken out and shipped 3,000 miles away? And so we started to look at what this possibly could mean and what the wider context was of that. And that's how it began. And we unearthed a wider and wider story. We found it wasn't just women, it was children, it was convicts, it was prisoners of war, it was all sorts. It was so people who signed up as indentured servants to get to America free of, they didn't have to pay the passage, the poor. They would be contracted, indentured by merchants and by captains and by planters' agents to go to America free, in return for which they gave up their rights to their labor for several years. It was supposed to be, according to history, it's 4 or 5 years. In fact, it could be as many as 12. And what they didn't realize was that they were signing away all their rights, and they had become chattels. They were used as property, regarded as property. Now, as we...
Oh, let him cook. Yeah. Now, what I think is interesting, I am going to have to step out again, so I don't know if you want to switch or anything, but what's very interesting about this, when it comes to the slave voyages, you know, they don't have primaries in Africa, period. They don't have primaries of these voyages stopping in Africa. So they had to kind of figure out basically what voyages are what. And what's interesting when they're getting into white cargo, and I think like in the future, you know, like when you're having these kind of discussions and stuff, and you want to know how he kind of feels or ease him into it. I know he's a lot older. You don't want to fight him or anything, but ask him how he feels about these individuals. Ask him if he heard of these individuals or if he heard the book White Cargo. And then you can ease into the questioning from there as far as to be like, oh, you know, what do you think about those voyages? And how would you have separated those voyages from African voyages when you're counting, you know, the statistics or estimates. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure. For sure. Definitely. That's awesome advice. You know what I'm saying? I think that, I think the white slavery side of it all is a very key component that is often, like he was saying, just overlooked, something that's not being taught to us. He didn't say that it's not being taught to us part, but it's obviously something that has not been brought to our attention. And I think they were just as astonished to discover it, so they put it in a book. But I definitely agree with that. You got to ease these people into talking about the things that you want them to talk about.
Yep. And you know what? I'm going to pull up a clip that ties into this perfectly as well when we're talking about, myths around the slave trade or questions around the slave trade, perhaps. I'm going to pull that up in 1 minute. 1 second, y'all. And what's up, y'all, in the chat as we get this together? Hope y'all enjoying it. I can hit
away from the computer for like the next 30 minutes. I'm about to join from the phone again.
Okay. Not a problem. Hold on. Yeah. And 1 second. And the early happy Mother's Day, y'all.
Yes.
Thank you. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers and
all the mommies.
That's right.
Make the word go round, baby. Okay. Pushing these people out of our wombs.
That's what I'm saying. I can't even believe I did it, but when they said boy, I couldn't turn back. I had to see him. Can't believe it.
Ooh.
But this is a very interesting subject here. And I'm saying anybody that really put their thinking cap on, they can see what some things are just obvious. That they ain't never told us the truth. Why would we start thinking that they telling us the truth in a book?
Mm-hmm.
They got you believing all kinds of stuff. A man walking up in the sky, all kinds of, he done got some human girl pregnant. I'm telling you, boy, I tell you, they believe everything. A man rode around in a fish's mouth, all kinds of stuff. They can, you know what I'm saying, Charisse, they got them believe in everything.
Won't he do it?
Okay.
Won't he do it?
Every time. And and I think that I was getting a lot of pushback about what I should have asked him, what I should have said, and different things like that. One thing I went into this interview understanding is that, he comes from their academia. Right. So I don't expect him to say certain things or, just kind of just explain what you are saying, and that's kind of what I wanted to really kind of encompass with this interview. I was shocked that he even responded and got back to the kids. So I was like, oh yeah, bet, so it was up from there. But I just want people to understand that, like this interview with him was not a session for me to be beating him up or, like that. But it was more so to get an understanding of how are you getting this information and, how is this, how is this thing plausible?
I thought you did well. I thought you moderated well for the most part, and I thought your questions were very good and engaging. I don't think they were surface, and that's a good point. Not everything needs to be necessarily a 1v1 or a debate. It could just be, you know what I mean? So, and I think it allowed, moderating in that style also sort of allowed him to, even though he was being hesitant with some of his answers, you know what I mean? He still was telling the truth, if that makes sense, right? So, all right. So I wanted to share this clip with you guys, right? It's about Salaga slave market in Ghana. You guys know already that for those who have taken the DNA test, when it comes to us over here, I don't know the statistics, but let's say at least 7 out of 10 is always going to trace it somewhere back to West Africa, as you and I both know. And like, as we're talking about like myths around the slave trade, or what have you, and unpacking that, there's also this notion that all the slave, that the colonizers came into the continent, right? the big bad wolf, and it was them who committed these atrocious crimes only, when in fact we know that that's not the case, right? So what I like about this is the fact that, you know, they're continental Africans. This is in Ghana, and they're discussing one of the I think largest in one of the major hubs with in the transatlantic slave trade. So let's, and I'm curious to hear what y'all think. Okay, so here we go. 1 minute. Tell me if I can hear it.
Slave markets. I will have a lot to show you. The Salaga slave trade, which occurred in the 17th century, this comprises of 3 tourist sites. We have the slave market, which is where we are here. Then we have the slave cemetery, and then the slaves wells and bath, known as Wankambai. Wankambai is a Hausa language. Wanka means bath. Bai means slaves. Wankambai. Bai, yes.
Sure.
Yeah, so that is the 3 sites that made up of the Salaga slave trade.
So what are the main events that happen here?
Yes, the Salaga slave trade, like I mentioned earlier, happened in the 17th century. To be precise, 1732. Slaves here are brought from Upper East, Upper West, and sometimes even Mali and Burkina slaves are brought here, because history has it that there's a shortcut from here to Cape Coast. Now, this was the main market. This is where the slaves are brought for sale. Here they are displayed like what we are seeing. So, and it wasn't only human beings that they sell. It was a mixed market. So it used to be called Babankaswa. Babankaswa, meaning big market.
Big market.
Yes, it extends from here up to the other side. History has it that it can take you like 3 hours roaming in the market. Yes, 3 hours.
That must be very big.
Very, very big. Yes, so you can have at least about 2,000 to 3,000 slaves arriving alongside other commodities
like goats.
Yes. So sometimes that's why sometimes it's discussed like that the slaves are being commodified. They are being
commodified, like
yes.
commodities.
Yeah, they are mixed with other commodities. So the way you go to the market looking for commodities, certainly like this, and that's how the slaves are being also exhibited here in the market.
So someone can come like, I'm looking for a female slave, I'm looking for a child
to buy.
I'm looking for a child to buy. So like, who is this guy?
Sorry, y'all. I'm gonna add.
Yeah, this depicts one of the slaves. Like I told you earlier, most of the slaves here are brought from Upper East, Upper West. Most of them are.
He looks very built. He has 6 packs.
You know, slave agent always wants those with the muscular ones. So that when they take them to Cape Coast, they'll be selected. When they take them to Cape Coast, they'll be selected and then be taken to the unknown world, where they work in the tobacco plantation or the sugarcane plantation.
So is this how they were?
Yes, so this depicts how they understand. So this tells you the kind of suffering that the slaves are going through. Because how is chained like this? He remained there like that. Please. No matter how scorching the sun is in it. No matter how heavy rain is falling, it's in it. You can't see.
Okay, I just want to make sure this is happening in Africa.
Yes, this is in Ghana, and it was one of the busiest slave markets, slave ports. Correct.
Okay, so in a whole country of so-called Africans, they can just come in and do all this.
Right. So the point of it is that good point, but the point of it is that you see that they're talking about slavery already being established within the continent, right?
Right.
We often like part of those myths. I feel like, and with the narrative, it's always like, yes, although there was slavery in Africa, it wasn't like the kind of slavery that it was over here. It wasn't. No, yeah, it was just as brutal, right? And so you're gonna hear, and you're going to hear him explain how they were captured, right? It was by Africans. It wasn't that the colonizer came out of the blue and did all this, by themselves. No. And in fact, he's also going to say that while this is the one of the busiest slave markets in Ghana, there was no Europeans that was doing the buying and the selling. They were all African.
Right. Like they were doing it.
So
they were giving them. Is that what you're saying? Like they were actually giving the Africans.
It was African. Yeah, it was African chiefs selling. Yes, absolutely, their own people. It wasn't like the colonizer came in and did this work all by themselves. Like we always think about that. That's impossible. Right. And he's going to say that this was one of the busiest during the transatlantic slave trade. However, it was all Africans doing the buying and the selling. It's getting ready to come up now.
Yeah, and people have to realize, because you have to realize in history, I mean, this had been going on for centuries. But because people don't look into the Eastern slave trade, they don't look into the Africans being taken to different parts of Africa and to Asia, then it's like this whole starting the story of the Africans in this time period of like the 1200s. But for the Africans, this started in the 7th century.
And it also goes to show that when you were speaking on the DNA, that all that really comes up is the West Coast. So if so many people were taken from the other side, then why is that not showing up in the DNA?
You gotta change your
back.
Oh, you're going to get back. That's why. Hold on. Okay, I'm going to continue to play I think it's like another 2 or 3 minutes when he says it, and then I'll stop it. Okay?
I'm tired. You can't say I want to pee. You can't say I want to shit. You can't say I'm hungry. You can't say I'm thirsty. You are just there like that, waiting and praying for someone to come and buy you.
So I try to say that the slaves, at the point they wish they will be bought.
Oh yes.
Rather than.
Yes. So sometimes even when they see people coming, they try to be active so that he's strong, he's this or that. So you buy him and then he'll be free.
So that he'll be free.
Yes, even though he doesn't even know where you are taking him or head to, but they just want to be bought and then be free.
So just so that this thing can be removed,
and then you also move out of the sun.
Oh.
Because whilst here they are fed once a day, they have little to eat. Be in a scorching sun the whole day, yet you have little water to drink. That is the ordeal of the slaves.
Now I see another woman. No, let's look at this man. This man here. Is this also another pusher?
This is also another. Yes, this also depicts another way by which the slaves are also being executed.
Why?
That is a punishment.
They have him chained at the back.
Yes,
then kneeling down.
They deem him to be stubborn. They see him to be stubborn. So this is a way of punishing while selling him.
So these are to show like a stubborn
slaves. So they're aggressive.
It's aggressive. So the hands are at the back.
Yes.
And the chain comes to the back.
Yes. Wow. Imagine you've been forcing out of your home. There are some of them that are never happy. They will never be happy. So they always want to do anything they can do, either to escape or even to be killed and then be free.
Keep being lazy about cleaning your apartment. No, seriously. Home Aglow will clean it for just...
You prefer to die rather than...
Yes, they see as a freedom to them. So imagine, he be here. Yes, he has lost his freedom, identity, respect, nothing.
It has been reduced to zero.
Zero.
Even zero is better. Negative.
You can say that. So that one alone, the agony alone made them, gave them that kind of psychological trauma to the extent that some of them, when they come here, they die.
They rather wish they die.
Death, yes.
Than to be.
You know the penalty or the consequence of what he or she is doing. but they don't care of
They
the
don't
consequence.
care. At this point,
Nothing matters.
I see.
Either escape or
die. Okay. So now I see another woman here. She's been chained to the tree, the baobab tree.
Yes.
And she's just on the floor.
Yes. Here, she's restless, helpless. She's just looking at the mercy of God. Sometimes we say that the only thing that feels their pain is the baobab tree. The
only thing that feels their pain
is the baobab tree. Whatever they are going through, their emotions, the tree is feeling it. Original 1989. Yeah, to replace the original one. And the original one has seen everything that the slaves are going, the slaves are went through. Wow. The suffering, the agony, the cry, the hunger, the thirsty, everything that they went through.
You know, when you are standing a bit from far, it looks so real.
Yeah.
And speed this up a little bit, y'all.
What is happening?
Yes.
And
place that you don't know, they chain you against a tree. You don't know what you have done. You don't know what they are doing with you. All you see yourself is being chained. They tell you, don't do this, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. You can't call your mother, you can't call your father. So, helpless, hopeless. That is the plight of the slaves. What has happened in the 17th century.
Wow. That's very, very inhuman.
Yes, you know, the slaves at that time, anybody could be taken as a slave. The only people they consider were the aged. As far as economically you can do something, then they can take you as a slave into slavery.
Okay, so I just want to find out. This woman also looks very sad, but then she's standing, and the other lady was on the ground.
You know, like I told you earlier here, based on your behavior with them, then they treat you. That's how they consider that in treating you.
Okay.
So she's not happy, but she has nothing. She can't do anything. So she leave everything to the mercy of God. So she try whatever happened at the end of the day.
So let me ask, a standing slave and a kneeling slave, which one? So the kneeling slave is a punishment.
It's a punishment.
But the standing one is a privilege.
Privilege, yes.
Because you have a good character.
Yes.
Okay. Now, what of this man here? He looks a bit old,
aggressive,
yes, and more mature.
Like he's going into pain,
and he has like 1 feet. I mean, his posture looks different from the other one.
All is a form of punishment. That is also another punishment. Though they are selling him, but he's also been punished. He's also punished like that. That's the punishment. That's how they display him.
So I want to ask a question. Was the white man ever here to, undergo this business?
Yes. That is one thing that will marvel people. The white man has never come to the Senegal slave market.
Boom! Did y'all hear that?
So he said the white man has never owned the slave market, or what did he say? Like, what about the slave market?
He said the white man
they never owned.
They never came to the Salaga slave market, which was one of the biggest slave markets during the triangular slave trade. So these were all Africans doing the buying and the selling. I'm gonna run that back so I can hear it again.
I just feel like they just be trying to make money off this shit.
Here we go.
Yes, that is one.
Wait, hold on, sorry.
They display him.
So I want to ask a question. Was the white man ever here to, undergo this business?
Yes, that is one thing that will marvel people. The white man has never come to the Senegal slave market.
The white man was never in
was
Salaga
never
slave
here,
market.
slave market. Salaga, during the slave trade, the white man has never come here. They came, but that was afterwards the slave trade was even abolished long before that.
Did y'all hear that?
That it was abolished long before the white man came, right? That's what he just said?
Yeah.
Is that if that is not a big head, if that is not a big headshot, then I don't know what is. So screw what we saying. Screw what a Black American is saying. Screw what a European is saying. Who cares what an Asian is saying? I only care about what a continental African is saying. And he's not saying that, of course, that there was no Europeans coming in during the slave trade, but this was one of the busiest and biggest slave markets in West Africa, right? And it was no white man that was involved.
Run by Africa.
It was run by Africans.
Yeah, it definitely, and that's where, I mean, like, I think I get what you're saying, Charisse, but I think it's basically a dual thing of just the intra part of slavery has been just discarded by the people. But there's one thing that the Moors, they can acclaim to, or if you want to call them African Muslim Moors or anything, but they can make an acclaim for enslaving Africans and other Africans, the African Arabs, the different African tribes enslaving each other. That have been going on since the 7th century.
Absolutely.
It has been a practice that was going on a long, long time. So yeah, they probably like, what? A white man did this? What? No. we've been having slavery for centuries.
Doing it to each other. And not only was it there, but it was universal in a lot of places that it was such a commonality, something that just went on. It was something that was a part of life, you know, for certain parts of the world. Definitely. I think that this whole transatlantic slave trade thing is what's taking precedence over all the other stuff that was going on.
And so even think about it, right? So he was explaining pretty much how they would have the slaves market themselves, right? You know, he was going through that, right? Like, so, and he was explaining what a punishment would look like, right? Like, so somebody might be kneeling in the hot sun, even though they're still chained to a tree. And so if you're standing up, that's seen as like a privilege. That sounds eerily familiar, right? To how slaves were auctioned off in the slave markets in the United States. Isn't this interesting? So,
That's no other way than how this is happening.
So quite possibly, is it possible, right, that some of the methods for the selling of slaves once they got to the Americas was learned by the Africans? Is that plausible to say? Could that be a possible answer or a part of the influence?
Yes, that's how I see it. Yes.
Right? That, I mean, what are we saying here now? And so absolutely all these little myths and stuff, I mean, out of the mouth of a continental African. Yes, there were Europeans, of course. We're not, please y'all, we're not saying that there were no Europeans involved in it at all. But part of unpacking the myths and stuff, right, is exploring that, because it's always told from this point of view that all of these horrible, bad, terrible things were done only by the European or the colonizer, so to say, right? It's never the African, when in fact it absolutely was. And on top of that, we know that Africans actually bought and sold Europeans. And a lot of the Europeans who were sold to different parts of Africa, right? Like, so the Sherbo tribe, for example, and other tribes that actually, bought white Europeans. Once they came to the Americas, that's where a lot of those hymns for abolishing slavery came from, like Amazing Grace, so on and so forth. But they wouldn't call it slavery. So if you're looking up, I told y'all you would write the word Shanghai. It's just a different word, but still a similar act. So this, right,
I agree.
Yes. Put your foot on it.
Come on. All right, that's what I wanted to show. I have another clip too, done by this Ghanaian brother right here. And he also went to, I guess that's part of his thing. And he's visiting all the slave markets, slave ports throughout, Ghana or what have you. And so he went to another large one. And in that one, they were saying pretty much the same thing. The elder that he was interviewing, and the elder was saying, like, this area here was the slave market for these villages or what have you. And what they would do is, like, the chief would ring, I guess, like a bell or make a sign. Love you, baby. Mwah. They would make a sign or do something which would alert the villagers to come to the center square, right, of the village. And then when they would come, they would be, pretty much sold off. So you see that, it wasn't the European per se that was driving this. This was driven and pushed by Africans.
I just wanted to kind of chime in and say that I feel like all of them slave ports, all of that bullshit over there, all of that crap over there that they're doing with that slave narrative is for them to get money and to kind of prey on people's pain, especially the so-called Black Americans who go over there and visit Ghana, and they show them that what's that thing, y'all, the no return door or whatever that is.
Door of no return.
Yeah, all that.
That's every stage.
Yeah, like it's really a straight up daggone. Yeah, it's really messed up actually. When you really get into the real history about things, it's like, dang, y'all just making money.
Yeah. Crazy. Very interesting. Very interesting. If anyone if y'all have any questions, if y'all want to join us, hit the link before
Thoughts real quick. Can you kind of go back to the white slavery clip real quick?
The one with Eltis?
The one with Don Jordan and Mike Walsh. I feel like there was still some key things that he was getting ready to get into that we didn't quite get him to let him finish all the way through. Like, we ain't got to watch the whole thing, but there was like, when he said that they were chattel and that they were when he was referring to the white people who were brought to the colonies, that they were chattels, and that this is the idea around indentured servitude, but in fact they signed away all of their rights. I think that people need to understand that when they say indentured servitude, and when they tell us that in our history or in history period, when it comes to these other people who came, I think that that's the whole cover up behind all of it. No, they were just indentures and they didn't have to work that long and it was easier for them. No, they was flat out slaves.
Yep. So is this the one you were talking about, Charisse?
Yes.
Yeah, I think go 5 minutes in.
Yeah.
Start 5 minutes in.
Okay. Here we go.
To Mike's Hardy, in that it was another fine mess he got me into. In that I read the photocopies of what he had brought back, and what he brought back was photocopies of a book written by a man called Abbott Emerson Smith, who had written about how women, mainly prostitutes, but all sorts of other people as well, who were taken out of the Bridewell prison in London in the early 1600s and sent off to the new colonies in America as brides for the planters, if you like. So these were women of marriageable age or of breeding age or whatever, who would be sent off, because up until then, of course, you had a brand new colony, it was all men. And for this to become viable, they needed women. And this seemed to be an astonishing thing. And so it went from there. And one looked at this and thought, well, this is just the tip of something. This is actually the edge of something here. And so the very fact that these women were taken out of the penal system in Britain, in England, and sent off to the new colonies with no say for themselves about whether or not they went or not. So the interesting thing was, what was it they were going into? What was it was already there that these people could just be taken out and shipped 3,000 miles away? And so we started to look at what this possibly could mean and what the wider context was of that. And that's how it began.
And we unearthed a wider and wider story. We found it wasn't just women, it was children, it was convicts, it was prisoners of war, it was all sorts of stuff. So people who signed up as indentured servants to get to America free of, they didn't have to pay the passage, the poor. They would be contracted, indentured by merchants and by captains and by planters' agents to go to America free, in return for which they gave up their rights to their labor for several years. It was supposed to be, according to history, it's 4 or 5 years. In fact, it could be as many as 12. And what they didn't realize was that they were selling away all their rights, and they had become chattels. They were used as property, regarded as property. Now, as we began to investigate this, and we used all the kind of resources that investigators do, we look at every kind of book, every kind of official report, etc., diaries, letters, we realized it was an enormous story. And it was also something which refuted one of the great ideas, one of the key ideas of the development of slavery, which is that in 1619 slavery began in America with the arrival of 20 and odd Negroes, as they were called, sold, according to accounts, by a Dutch captain to planters in England. And this was where slavery began. Well, it wasn't true. Slavery had begun earlier. Children and women and convicts had been sold earlier than that. And although a small number of Africans were subsequently brought to Virginia and sold over the next decades, only very few, only 300.
Oh, shit, what'd I do?
Yeah, but that's good though. That's good though. That's perfect right there.
Well, I'm so sorry, y'all.
Yeah, but that was perfect where it stopped at, because I think that's where people need to understand that and get it. He made it a point to say that through everything that they researched, diaries, investigative research, et cetera, that the primary story of slavery, which was that in 1619, 20 and odd Negroes were shipped to Virginia and from Africa and all this bull crap, and that was not true. He said, in fact, slavery started, it was much earlier, and that these people who were sent over here were enslaved way before, decades before. So I think that they've missed the mark with this. And when people bring out this kind of information, people don't really want to believe it or digest it or take it in. But it's clear as day who these slaves really were. So it's
thank you. It is mind-boggling, and it's crazy because really Save Voyages backs up the narrative, so people don't really see the difference between the estimates and actually going through the data. But definitely, I'm excited for y'all to see when Sword is going through it or anything, because he's definitely able to actually manipulate the data and see what the data is saying. Because when you just have what Slave Voyages data is and not including the estimates, it's really telling a whole different story. And the story is closer to the truth. So exciting.
I agree with it.
And
the slick part, wait a minute though, that's the slick part is the changing of hands. How you allowing those people to take the blame for stuff that you did yourself. You know what I'm saying? By not telling their history. Yes, they're doing it. We got this, but I'm just saying it make it appear that it was just the undone doing stuff and they wasn't doing nothing.
Well, no, they were doing something. No, they definitely was participating.
Definitely doing. They was doing it.
Yeah, they were definitely participating. But right. But to your point, you're absolutely right. Right, like it needs to be a little bit more balanced. But yeah, no, that's. But even right. He said it even in the interview, right? And even on the website, it is an estimate. It's their best guess. You know what I mean? But people use it as holy grail, right? Because it was written. That somebody actually written, so it must be true. No, it's a guess. They said it is a guess. It's an estimate. There's nothing specific about that. That's very general. When figures are like that, when it's just your best guesstimate, right? There's a lot of hypotheticals that can come. There's different conclusions that can come from that. So
Well, I guess it was just a way of life at that time. It was common, and also it parallels to it was common for crucifixion at the time of Jesus. Everybody that was being punished was crucified. So it's crazy how people wear these crosses. Y'all kill me with that, but I digress.
I digress. Yep.
Yep. But cross is a kind of new thing. Well, it's not a new thing. It's a stolen thing, basically. The whole idea
Just
of the
like
cross,
yeah.
because the Bible doesn't say Jesus was on a cross. But that's another thing.
And it definitely says he did die.
Yeah, he was hung on a tree.
Yeah, but didn't die though.
Well, he eventually died. He had to be resurrected. Yeah, so he died.
I don't know when he died. Because
I think it's Luke and Mary.
Luke said, and Luke, this said that he knocked on the door.
You have it sounds echoey.
I don't know whose song.
Yeah.
I mean, excuse me, whose screen's doing that. But go ahead, Dulcie, because it's a whole story in Luke showing that he came. He said, "Touch me, feel me, for a ghost has no flesh and bones, as ye see me with." Then they still didn't believe him. He asked them, what was they eating? Because remember, they said when he knocked on the door, Peter said, "Come in," and he thought he had seen a ghost. Because remember, they all left him at the scene of the crime. Peter had lied and told people he said, "Shoot, they got him. I didn't get my butt kicked. I don't even know him." Denied him 3 times. And his other boys left him too. So they don't know whether he died or not. They wasn't there to even see him get put on the cross, on a tree cross or whatever. They didn't even see it. So when he came walking up in the room, he said, "Here's where they stuck me with the spears. So it's definitely me. It's just that I ain't no ghost." He said, "A ghost does not have flesh and bone, as ye see me with." So he didn't even die on the cross. Sorry, that's how it goes.
To each their own on that one.
Well, that's what's in the book. That's what's in the book.
Oh, no. I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, there's 3-4 different accounts in the book based on what Luke saw something different. Mary saw something different. Timothy is the one that got to touch the scars or whatever. Timothy, right? Yeah, Timothy. And then, so there's all kinds of different accounts in the Bible. That's why I was just saying to each its own as far as like the Bible portion.
Yeah, but I'm saying, seriously, I can believe the Africans treat each other that way with the horrible things that I've seen, even in the movies that they make. I'm talking about how they treat their maids. Oh my goodness. And the Arabs. Oh my God. They treat the maids, the butlers, and people who watch their children and stuff so bad. They even let the kids treat them bad. So I can believe that they would allow their own people to be enslaved and all that. I can believe all of that. All of that. I've even had friends that I know tell me how when they try to get away, how they would try to do, stab them with the machete and all kinds of stuff. And again, you got to keep in mind, they mutilate little girls too. Who will have the mind to circumcise a little girl? Who would do that? So see, I'm not shocked.
But they're not all the same people. I mean, people have to realize that, and that's where this whole paintbrush has been, to be like, make all these people, make every color. If you're a dark complected color, you're one group of people, whether it's Africans, whether it's Moors, whether it's Black. It's this whole paintbrush of history to be like they're one group of people, but it wasn't one group of people. It wasn't Africans selling Africans. It was the Ojo tribe going against the Yoruba tribe, going against the Tuareg tribe going against this tribe. So it wasn't like they were selling their own tribe into it. They were warring with each other and selling the other ones into slavery.
I say either way it go is bad. I don't care if it's, you know what I'm saying, for somebody else's people, whatever. Why are you doing that? Why are you so cruel-minded? Why are you so savage-minded that you would do some crazy mess like that? Selling people to a whole nother, make them slaves and just beating them and stuff. They beat their own people with belts, everything. I've seen it.
Wars usually go down like that, though. I mean, like the Yamasee here were slave traders, and there's different slave trading tribes here. And it's just like when you're warring with each other, that's what the confusion is, because they've painted this narrative of slaves to be outside of war, but slaves are captives. Slaves are the product of war. So we can take away the slave and then just look into wars and be like the captives. That's where we're going to find any kind of slavery like that, is amongst wars.
I know y'all probably, I mean, I haven't seen the movie in a while, but I do have the gist of the movie, Hotel Rwanda. And I'm sure you guys are familiar with that. And you know, I think it's the same context in what we're speaking on when we're talking about, you know, two different tribes, or they were led to believe they were two different tribes, but in fact they were the same people going at each other's neck. I mean, that movie had me, my mouth was just to the floor, just completely crazy. Just, you know, obviously the United States had played some role in that too, you know, but I ain't gonna go there, you know, but it just shows how they can just kind of manipulate, I don't know who's doing it, but how the manipulation is just there. And if you're not united,
but they're the Rondis and the Tutsi. And they are two different. They're two different groups. I don't know if it's like a tribe, like one tribe, or if they're like the Yamasee or anything like that. But they definitely. I know how Hotel Rwanda says, but I actually had one of my best friends from Uganda, and it's crazy. She's a product of her mom being Tutsi, I think, and her dad Rondis, or the other way around. So it's one of those. So she like, I'm one of the only. And she explained it or anything, and it's like it wasn't just them putting it in. They took advantage of that they had been beefing with each other for long periods of time. She didn't quite know what the beef was about, but there's this idea of Tutsis were more European looking, more, I guess, their features, they were lighter or anything, and the Rondis were just always beefing with the Tutsis, and the Tutsis were always beefing with the Rondis, and that got exploited. But they never saw themselves as the same
they never see themselves that way, for sure. But to me, like, I mean, I guess just, you know, this is just only opinion, only, you know, to me, I just felt like they didn't look that different from each other. You know, it's no different from and the dudes from O Street beefing with the dudes over there on the upper side. They only 2 blocks away. You know, it's no different from that type of stuff. And you know, I just found it very very interesting how things happen. And you know, I mean, I just wish we do a little bit better with it. That's all. You know, but it is what it is. Shit. But I did find that interesting. Like, to me, in my opinion, like they like looked alike, but you know, who knows?
Well, if anybody got anything they want to come from out in the chat, come up. Dots, did you drop the link?
Yeah, I did already a few times.
Shoot. Come on, shoot. When they start being scared to come up on the panel.
I'm
glad they learning.
Tomorrow's Mother's Day again, so happy Mother's Day, ladies, and happy Mother's Day, ladies in the chat.
Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers. Bessie, hey girl, happy Mother's Day.
Mama Day.
I know them kids ready. You wild, okay? But we love our babies. Happy Mother's Day. Shoot,
I don't know why they always, every Mother's Day, they try to get me with all the grandkids.
Oh, man, you know how that go.
I think somebody's in the back, y'all. Somebody in the back, because I can't bring them up. My screen is not allowing me to. Oh, hey, Sword.
It is.
Peace. What's going on with it?
Hey,
What's going on?
Sword.
Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers. How y'all doing?
Thank you. Happy Mother's Day to yours as well. Let her know we said Happy Mother's Day.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Happy Mother's Day to me. Thank you.
No, I'm talking about your wife.
Yeah.
Trying to jack the credit. So what did
No, but I saw.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No. Go ahead.
I just watched the debates on the other channel. What I miss?
Everything.
Yeah.
Well, since you did watch that, let us know a little bit what you think. Good.
No, I think
good.
I think it was some good debates over there. I think I like both of them. It's always hindsight 2020 to critique debates after, but it's one thing to be a bystander versus being in the debate and, having to live it real time. So I say it was a good debate. Both of them, all four gentlemen came with great sources and stuff like that. So overall, it was a good debate. And yeah, I'll say that.
Yeah. So from what you're good with the research. So when you starting your channel for it?
I don't know. I'm enjoying the time off, after we just got done with the David Eltis project. I don't know. I'm enjoying my time without having, no commitments or anything like that.
Yeah.
Even taking time off right now to kind of chill out for a second, give my brain a rest, because going to sleep, sleeping off 3-4 hours, getting up reading all day.
Yeah.
That shit ain't easy. So but I don't know. I might start my own channel. I don't know. It just I'm gonna support the movement. I just haven't figured out what my lane is or how I'm gonna do it yet.
Yeah. Yeah. But you're good. You're good now. You're sharp like a sword when it comes to the research game.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I get better and better every day.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about at the end of the day. And I even said that on Chief Channel after we got done with the interview with David Eltis. It is a lot of reading.
Mm-hmm.
So, for people who, want to fight, want to get out here and push the line and stand on American Indian business, take your time. This shit ain't going nowhere.
Right.
Take your time, learn, make sure you really understand what you're talking about. So that way, when you get out here, you won't get caught slipping.
Mm-hmm.
Because, when you get to the most granular aspect of it, it's kind of clear and evident of what actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
And what didn't happen. Certain people can only make assumptions and certain people don't have to. The ones that don't have to, it might take you a little bit longer to get there, but just take your time and do the research, and this shit ain't going nowhere.
Right. Good advice. JB's and OTK.
Hey.
What's going on, OTK?
What's Sue-woo?
What's up, man?
Sue-woo. What's happening? Hey, sisters. Happy early Mother's Day. You know what I mean? Thank you. You know what I mean? Turning it up on American Indian Gang. Y'all beautiful sisters. Definitely happy Mother's Day to y'all. Peace to my dog, Swordfish, man. Swoo-woo. JB, my brother. You know what I mean? My sister Charisse, y'all, Nisha. Damn, Dots. Man, y'all some beautiful sisters, man. And y'all get beautiful by the day. Every time y'all do an interview, y'all just get more beautiful, beautifuler, and beautifuler.
Beautiful. Thank you. That's so nice. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Word, man. Y'all know I've been down since day one with y'all. You know what I'm talking about. And man, like Sword said just now, this shit ain't gonna come overnight. Motherfucker just want to jump in the fight overnight, boy. But listen, you can't just do that, man. This shit, you really got to do some reading. And not just reading. You got to comprehend and understand what the hell you reading.
Yes. Yes. Were you guys here for the clip that I had played with the Salaga slave market? Were y'all here for that piece?
Nah. How long was it? Is it long?
No, but I can send you the clip. It was a few minutes, but it was just pretty much like, you know, the Salaga slave market was one of the busiest slave ports in Ghana, right? During the transatlantic slave trade. And so since we were unpacking some of the myths around the slave trade, it was really interesting because you heard a continental African, right, explain that, in fact, there was no European that was involved in the slave trade at that port during that time. They were all African buying and selling.
Correct. Like that Guyanian king or whatever, he was transporting so much of his own goddamn peoples out to, I think it was the French. I think the French or either the English that told him, hey man, you got to stop this shit. And they offered to go to war with him and told him, we're going to shut your ass down if you don't stop this. You're doing too much.
Yep.
Yeah. See, they don't ever want to put their role in it.
Right.
Hey man, y'all gotta chill. Y'all can't be doing this while I'm on the thing. God damn it.
JB, we gonna roll with you because you say you Aboriginal.
I mean, I'm Aboriginal to where I'm from.
Right, exactly. So you good. You fall underneath the Aboriginal paradigm, man. You from where you from, man. Nobody can take that from you. You ain't saying nothing.
I've been scared because last time I was on some bullshit, and now I feel like I gotta hide from the Indians for a little bit before the weather cools down. I was just playing games, but then now I feel like I might catch a bow and arrow or something. It's a blow dart might catch me real quick and just fuck around.
What's going on, JB?
What's up, Sword?
Chilling. Like I said, a blow dart with frog poison and shit.
Yeah, nigga, I might get you know them shit too. Just like damn, something bit me in my neck. Homie dead. Oh,
go ahead. Just next time a Portuguese colonizer comes in here, don't play devil's advocate with him. That's it.
Oop.
JB, now I
you
know
telling the story wrong.
Before y'all
right.
That JB, so I didn't follow it up that day when she said it, and I'm not gonna follow it up now.
Right. Tell them big Indian business. What's up?
Just real quick, y'all. Peace to you, Swolfie. I hope you're doing good. I hope you get some time that you're able to catch my interview with David Eltis that occurred on that Friday right before y'all's. And whatever feedback that you could provide, I would really love it. And just let me know what you think. We did show a little bit of it, but it is an hour long, so you know how that goes. But I hope that you can, when you get some time to check that out for me.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Yeah, my bad for missing it. I was knee deep in researching and making sure I had my stuff together. So
of course.
Yeah, but I'll definitely do that for you. No problem at all.
Thank you.
Do y'all mind if I just replay like the last minutes?
Played it. Yeah, played it.
So I can hear it.
Well, hold on before you do that.
Hey, I converted JB. I
gotta run, yo. Y'all about to kill my people left and right, so I gotta run from this.
You so silly.
But no, happy Mother's Day early.
Thank you.
Shoot y'all early, first man of the USM talking.
Thank you.
Right.
Is this nigga getting titles like a
It's
preacher?
it's an honor to meet you first, man.
Oh, y'all didn't know? Oh man, I've been honorary USM from the jump, from the dribble.
Yeah, you was. Yeah, you was. Yeah, you was.
Yeah.
They just had me in the sidelines, ready to jump in when she gets south. I'm the backup. I'm the reserve unit.
Talk in the background, dog. Go ahead, sis.
All right, y'all. I'm gonna jump off now, but peace out. Love y'all.
Thank
Love
you
you,
for
man, JB. Peace and love, Jay. Zimbabwe.
in the building. All right. Here we go.
In the slave trade, the white man never.
Let me back it up.
But he's also been punished.
All right, here we go.
That is also another punishment. Though they are selling him, but he's also been punished. He's also punished like that. That's the punishment. That's how they display him.
Sorry.
So I want to ask a question. Was the white man ever here to, undergo this business?
Yes. That is one thing that will marvel people. The white man has never come to the Salaga slave market.
The white man was never in Salaga
Was never
slave
here for slave market. Salaga, during the slave trade, the white man has never come here. They came, but that was afterwards the slave trade was even abolished, long before that. But during the slave trade, the white man never step here.
So how was the trade then happening without them?
Yes. Before the slave trade, in the 16th century, Salaga became the #1 cola market in sub-Saharan Africa.
Okay.
And it was this, the Hausa, and then the Zabarma people and other tribes who were here trading in that in that particular trade. So later, when the transatlantic slave trade started, and they realized now the lucrative business has now.
Y'all heard the tribes that he mentioned, right? That was involved in the slave trade. You guys heard him on that one. So
I
he
couldn't
already.
understand what he was saying. What was he saying?
Yeah, I know. Because that's why I had the captions up. Hold on.
Yeah, he actually went back, swore to the 15th century. So yeah, so he's also adding in a little bit of the trans-Saharan slave trade too.
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead.
Marvel people. The white man has never come to the Salaga slave market.
The white man was never in Salaga
never
slave
here for slave market. Salaga, during the slave trade, the white man has never come here. They came, but that was afterwards the slave trade was even abolished, long before that. But during the slave trade, the white man never step here.
So how was the trade then happening without them?
Yes. Before the slave trade, in the 16th century, Salaga became the #1 cola market in sub-Saharan Africa.
Okay.
And it was this, the Hausa, and then the Zabarma people and other tribes who were here trading in that in that particular trade. So later, when the transatlantic slave trade started, and they realized now the lucrative business has now become slave trading. So they switch from the cola trade to slave trade. So these Hausa and then the Zabarma people were the slave raiders. They were those moving from here up to Upper East, Upper West area. Some of the slaves they were buying, others they were exchanging them for food items. A family, due to hunger that they were experiencing in that place, somebody could just sell his own child. Others will exchange their children. Maybe you have 5 children, you exchange them for food items.
Y'all hear that? I'm gonna stop it there.
I heard him. He said that
The headshot.
the tribes are trading amongst one another. The Hausa and the Zambadara or something like that. And then he said that they was trading into the upper northwest Africa.
That's right.
Now, what's interesting about that, Docs, can you pull up Slave Voyages, please?
Yes. 1 second.
He said the white man wasn't there.
Headshot. What do we, I mean, there was other slave markets, but that was one of the busiest. So that's a straight headshot. All right. 1 minute. Okay, let me share.
I can't wait till somebody get into how the Spaniards did slave trading too. The Spanish did it real bad too.
Which part you want me to go to, Sword?
Okay, click on the one at the top, far left that says Transatlantic. Click that tab. Then
Yeah.
click on database.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll see, scroll back up a little bit. Okay, you see right now you're on the results page. The second tab to the far right where it says maps.
Yes.
Click that. Now here's where some people get caught slipping.
Okay.
So this image here tells a story, but then if you zoom in on the Africa side, it starts to tell a different story, which aligns with what the gentleman just shared in the clip. So zoom in on where the number, zoom in. Keep going.
Okay. Oh, I see where you're
So,
going with this. Okay. I see where you're going with this.
so if you zoom in a little bit more, just pick one of those dots and zoom in. No pun intended.
Right.
Now, if you hover over the dot, you'll see Africans returning and Africans carried off. So, for example, you look at the far right, you see 1 million embarked and 877,000 disembarked. If you go to another dot,
okay,
you can just pick any random dot you want.
Okay.
You see 1.4 million left and 1.3 million landed. So, and this goes all the way up and down the coast of Africa. So we hear that 12 million left, but we don't hear no story about the ones like who are these people. Now the site is calling them Africans. So who is the millions of Africans that landed back on the coast? Like who are these people?
Yep.
So and what else I was going to say? Okay. So to further drive this home, go zoom out a little bit and then go to the Transatlantic tab again.
Okay, 1 second. Don't forget to hit the like button, y'all. Wait, you want me to go back, you said?
Yes, ma'am. Go back to the Transatlantic tab that was all the way at the top.
Yeah. Okay, and you want me to go where? To maps again?
Click on the Transatlantic tab all the way at the top of the screen. Not on the map part, but like all the way. Yeah,
no, that's the hyperlink. It's not. 1 second. Let me just go back one more time. Okay.
There we go. Click Transatlantic.
Yep.
And then click Understand the Database, the top one. So this is the methodology. Now on the left side, I want you to click on the tab that's like the 5th or 6th from the bottom.
Okay.
Where it says regions of embarkation and disembarkation.
Okay.
Now, that first sentence says, the above procedures generate imputed figures were necessary for the data used to produce series of slave departures and arrivals for 8 different regions in Africa. So all 3 of these align, or both of these align with what the gentleman said. The gentleman said that there was a slave trade along the west coast of Africa. Then we take you to the single source of truth that's procured to be like the spokesman for the transatlantic slave trade. They're showing Africans leaving, Africans landing. And then when you come to the methodology, they said they left and arrived on the coast of Africa.
Yep.
So I agree with the brother in the video. I agree with everything he said.
Come on. Unbelievable. I hope you guys in the chat are enjoying yourself, enjoying the conversation. Again, happy Mother's Day from us to you guys. Make sure y'all like it. Feel free to share the stream. Yes. We got some of our day ones on here. Sword in the building. OTK all day. This is a good conversation.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. And you know what's crazy, right? Sword, they was doing the same shit over here. They was just taking Americans from one place of America to another place. Embark, disembark, still in the fucking Americas.
In the Americas, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's where that whole intra-American thing comes in.
The real triangular slave trade. Yeah, you know what I mean? When it went from America, Central America, South America, Caribbeans, and back on up within that corridor right there.
And to make it a little bit more personal, because that's part of the story within my family line. So although my nana was born in Barbados, her dad was 100% Blackfoot from the United States. And so one might say, right, the next question should be, how did that happen? How did he come to Barbados, right? Like, right, because there was a lot of trade going back and forth. He was like what you would call a merchant seaman, but he was 100% Blackfoot, you know?
Only difference between us is over here, we was prisoners of war.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It was all about war. And these was the captors. When they captured, you know, and then they had these Indians who was helping them.
Yep.
See, one thing about us, we don't shy away from our information. Nigga, if it's some bad motherfucker, it's some bad people.
Yep.
But don't live on that same curse. And some of these people out here be acting the same way of these people who we finding out in history acted. And they from the same areas. But I leave that alone though.
But see, one of the things that, I think, it's kind of like one of those things where when we talk about this a lot, like I since I've had time to sit back and kind of reflect, I always ask myself, with the general narrative, there are so many things that get overlooked just because it's the general narrative. For example, that voyage on the Atlantic is the most difficult voyage to make on the planet. There's no other voyage out there. So if that's the most difficult voyage to make, why does it not get the level of scrutiny that it deserves? Prove that these people actually came over here. Because you're talking about hurricanes. You're talking about, like, Dulcie. I pulled Dulcie on the phone and talked to my cousin. My cousin is a retired Navy veteran. He did his 25 years in the service. He sailed across the Atlantic. One of the reasons why he got out was because on one trip, the shit made him so sick that he thought he was going to lose his life. They had to strap down. He said that if he didn't strap down to the boat, that he would have lost his life because the boat would have thrown him across and he would have hit something and died. Like these are the real world experiences of these people that's literally out here on the water, and a naval vessel like that is like a moving city.
Yeah.
So, and we think that niggas just got on a boat and on a wooden boat and they just came across the Atlantic like that, and we don't question that. Yeah,
using wind. Using wind now.
So, when folks be like, prove it, I don't see what the issue is, because we know Europeans was involved in it. We know Indians was involved in it. That's a given. But now it's like, okay, this is the hardest voyage to make outside of either going underneath Africa or going underneath South America in whatever direction. Those three are the hardest voyages to make.
Correct.
And you just want me to accept this shit? Nah, I just my bad for cussing. It is. I think it deserves the highest level of scrutiny. I think anybody that's subscribing to that story, they should they should not be pissed when someone says prove it. And
Right.
just because you come up with an article that says Africa, okay, now we got to look at the date. Where
Right.
in Africa did they come from?
Facts.
Like, I think all of that needs to be scrutinized if
All
you're
that.
gonna say that these people came over here by the millions.
Shit,
It
even the
deserves
ship, Sword, even the ship need to get scrutinized. The schooner.
Yeah, all of it should.
All this shit needed because they look at that goddamn boat that them abolitionists drew up that never was used and act like that book was in service. That boat was in service. That boat ain't never get used off that drawing.
But even like
Come on, man.
the names. I'm sorry, OTK, my bad.
No, baby, go ahead, baby. Go ahead.
I was saying even like, you know, how the name Indian comes about, right? Because the narrative says that, you know, when Christopher Columbus sailed and got to Dominican Republic / Haiti, that he thought he was in India, so he called them Indians. And we know that's a bold-faced lie because India didn't get the name India until the 1600s. And he arrived in the island in 1492. So if the country wasn't named India until the 1600s, how can it be true that Christopher Columbus thought he was in India when he arrived in the island? How does that make sense?
Makes no sense at all.
Right. The truth is in your. It makes no sense. He called them Indians because he thought he was in India. That's a lie. India wasn't called India until the 1600s.
Bharat in Hindustan.
Dulce, you still there? I want Dulce to tell this story because y'all go. Dulce, you there?
She probably dropped.
Wait, what story?
Dulce, you remember the story my cousin told us about the guy, his friend that left from Tampa Bay and where he tried to sail to and what happened to him? You remember that one?
Yeah, he was trying to go to Virginia, right?
Right. And how far did he make it?
Just like outside, he just left Tampa Bay pretty much, but he was like right outside, still in Florida, I think, right?
Yeah, he made it to Jacksonville.
And the Jacksonville, yeah, and the whole boat crashed. They were able to save him, but didn't he have his stuff? Didn't he have his stuff with him too?
Yeah.
Because he was trying to move her. Yeah. So lost the whole boat.
Now think about this. He left Tampa on his way trying to go to Virginia. He barely made it to Jacksonville before they had to bring out the helicopters to come save him, or he would have died.
That's crazy. That's only
Can
like
you imagine?
That's only like 6 to 8 hours driving difference. Oh my God, he still ain't making out of Florida.
It's from Jacksonville to Tampa. Yeah, that's 2.5.
Oh, 2.5.
Yeah, that's if you're going like straight
about
across.
West Palm Beach. My bag. I'm thinking about fucking West Palm Beach. God damn.
When you right,
hey, I'm thinking about West Palm Beach, man. I had a flashback. I'm sorry. Damn, I just been in Tampa the last time I've been in Florida. You know what? I went to Orlando and fucking thing them, man. Damn, my dumb ass. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But in a boat, that's like what 3.5. That's like 3 hours on a boat.
On a boat, on a sailboat. He was in the schooner.
On a sailboat, it's longer because you're dealing with the wind.
Yeah, and think about that, bro. When you think about
sometimes
somebody leaving from Ghana or Nigeria, and they coming across the Atlantic with some of the biggest waves that you can't even imagine how big those waves are. Like bigger than
they could never come.
And this dude tried to sail along the coast, and he didn't even make it to Jacksonville before his shit flipped over at the bottom of the ocean right now, and they had to come send the helicopter out there to come get him.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Come on.
Why they say, man, the only way you really can come across the Atlantic from Africa over here and you would have to sail down the coast of Africa down to the south, and you would literally have to island hop from there. Dominican Republic, Haiti, you know what I mean? You have to island hop or either hit the coast of South America. But the thing is, though, our coasts is so fucking shallow, you will wreck. That boat will get tear up. And we have so many stories in South Carolina about these islands tearing up these boats and these people getting island stranded.
Yeah. I'm making some, come on, like making some good points. It's like the truth is always in front of our face, right?
Right.
It
And
really
I
is in
told
front of our
Sword
face.
that shit. Or I told Sword that shit one time. Me and him were talking. I said, Sword, you know what? We so goddamn smart and do so much studying to sometimes, doggone, that shit be right in front of our face. We don't want to accept it. We go looking for it deeper, but that should be right in front of our face. The simple shit. But you know, because we research so hard, we don't accept that. Like, oh no, it got to be more. And we, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But yeah, it should be right in front of your face, man.
That's right.
Check out this Atlantic. Check out this Atlantic.
Okay, go ahead.
Real quick.
No, I'm talking about this picture, Sword, that you sent us.
It's supposed to be the Atlantic Ocean.
Yep. Look at how choppy and cold and yep.
The thing is, y'all need to look at the ship that they're on.
Right.
This
And
ain't
how
no
it's
sailboat now.
Mm-hmm.
And look how that way. I look how them waves rocking this.
That's right. Yep.
So we talking about a wooden ship now. A wooden ship.
Yep.
With a sail now. So they really can't even navigate which direction they go if the wind. Man, listen. Oh man, go ahead, Sword. I'm gonna stop. Sword starting not laughing, man. I'm about to stop, man.
I
hear Sword laughing so fucking long, man.
Yeah. It's silly.
I mean, to think about it, man, is like I was about to say something else. I forgot what I was going to say, but like even just that part alone, what the water is doing, that boat look like it's like a 500-ton boat, and look what it's doing to that boat. Can you imagine a sailboat?
That's right.
Or a wooden jump.
That's right.
With two sails on it.
That's right.
Remember that night we was cooking that little diagram for hours. We was cooking schooners, all of that, just laughing because this is unbelievable. It's really something that you can't fathom.
I swear. They don't even understand, Sister Charisse, when we was asking them, like, yo, where the slave boats at? Prove the slave boats. You know, we want them to show us, like, yo, man, they wouldn't know where the slave boats could surprise across that shit. You know what they tell us? Oh, they got ate up by worms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, would.
No, but it's crazy. And they drink the water. They brought enough water to last. I'm like, wait, how, Sway? How can that be possible? Okay. Like, come on. Just things that just doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. It doesn't. This doesn't.
Oh, y'all travel across that shit for 4 months. Y'all, hey, you know what? I tell you what. If any one of you Africans survived that, if y'all was one of those supposedly slaves at the bottom of a ship, like what they tell us, if y'all survived 4 months, like Kunta, man, I swear to, I got the utmost respect for you. I ain't even gonna lie to you, dog.
See, like, look at what the gentleman said in the chat. Or I'm not sure if that's a man or a woman. They said the thing is the bottom of an African. Oh, he said.
Oh Lord,
he said a boat. I thought he said a boat. I was gonna say, you know, so it's. I don't know, man. You know, people can accept, you know, whatever they want.
He trolling. That's That's I know he changed his name. That's what the guy name? What is the name? Is y'all know who that is?
Yeah, I mean, he's talking about Thor. He also said something earlier about goddamn.
No.
Yeah, he's a comic book hero. He comes straight out of comic book.
He
Wale.
needs to be ignored, I guess. But let me ask you a question, just to be clear. All right, because just to be clear, because people will come to this conclusion. So, are you guys saying that there was no slave trade?
No, it
Okay.
didn't happen the way they say it happened.
Okay.
That's what I said. It was a. I don't even want to say so-called slave trade. We could say an indentured servitude, but it could have been a slave trade. But I just want to say that, man. Yeah. It definitely wasn't the way that we was taught.
Right.
You know what I mean? Definitely.
I understand why you did that. And the way I'm gonna answer it is this. At the end of the day, can't none of them niggas prove it. So it really don't matter what my answer is. I could say yes, I could say no. I could tell them ain't one African came off that boat. I could say that if I wanted to. Because what they gonna have to prove, see, the only thing they looking for is the word African. But they can't tell you if the actual person is African.
Correct.
They can't tell you that.
Correct.
You know, how do you know that the person that you're referring to, or these Negroes being sold, or whatever the case may be, how do you know that those people are actually indigenous Africans?
Right, exactly. And they get mad when I ask them that. Prove
Because
that they
now you gotta consider the mulattoes, because you can't say that those folks didn't go over there and marry into those tribes. Like you can't. So do you make room for the fact that there were mulattoes that could have been brought over here? And then if these people were mulattoes, was it two European nations that created a mulatto? Like who were the people that was there that was actually being slave trafficked? Were they even indigenous to that area? Like there's so many assumptions that's made before you say a African. Like
shit,
you gotta
understand too. The fucking Asian was over there heavy too, from the Trans-Saharan slave trade. Millions of them got enslaved and got brought into Africa and into Europe too, and into Spain.
Like Madagascar, the island from Africa.
We don't talk about that slave trade, but it was a bunch of Asian. Over during the Ottoman Empire that was brought in there. They brought Asian slaves into Africa, and they took Africans and whatever and Europeans out of there into their place. They was doing the vice versa. That shit was wicked. Though. I'm talking about millions of them. So now, who is the real African at this point?
That's the real question.
When you got all these different influences, all these different mixture, who is the real African? And one must ask that question when you got people who are all Pan-Africans arguing amongst each other whether or not the Kemetic people were black or not.
But see, that's always been like my question to most Pan-Africans. Because it's like, okay, but
all the same people.
Right, like in that culture also is very different than what you would find in like, as we know, like in Central Africa or in South Africa, right? But it's almost like it's a form. Okay, I feel like it also can be a form of like a colonial mindset, right? For us to think that we can just like jack another's culture, you know what I'm saying? So because it happened in that continent, be it North Africa, right? How many of us, if in fact you can trace your bloodline, but how many of us really going to trace our bloodline back to Egypt? But we act like those were, you know what I mean? Like we're their direct descendants. It's like, no. How do you know that? Especially if you're saying that you believe in DNA tests, and we know 7 out of 10 who take the test is going to come back to somewhere in West Africa. It's not coming back to North Africa. So that's
a great point.
No, really, right? Exactly, right? So you have family, your lineage goes back to West Africa, but you're revering another culture. Those, like, how do you know those are your people? How you just take something because they have melanin and it sound, you know, and it sounds great and good and robust? That makes no sense. You're not Commission. You're not Egyptian. Your bloodline don't go back there. The DNA test done told you that. They said you Nigerian, baby. What we doing? You're not from there. You from West Africa. What are you talking about? But I just think it makes people feel good. I've never understood that.
Type of thing. All of the migrations and all you get is West Africa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
that's why a part of it is cap.
Yeah.
Hey, Nisha, who we talking about?
What'd you say?
Nah, I was joking. I was making a joke off of. I think there was like one or two. I said, who we talking about?
Right.
Yeah, I went and watched that live. I was dying laughing every time
right.
you said
that. Who? That part.
But nah, yeah, I think you know, I think the fight still continues, and I like the fact that, you know, people doing the genealogies and stuff like that, and then, you know, for the ones that want to get out here and bang a little bit, you know, as long as you got that part down, shit, you can't lose. Everything else is all upside.
Okay.
So, you know,
that part. We don't listen. It's been great conversation, y'all.
yeah, I wish I'd have ate the whole thing. I wanted to watch the debates on AP channel. So it was a good debate. It was some good debates over there.
I can't wait to see in its entirety. You guys did a great job.
When next time y'all going live?
Who knows? We be like Wednesday come, and like now we postponing. So, but it'll be one day this week, probably Wednesday or Friday.
Gotcha. Yeah. Charisse, you still there?
I am.
When next time you going? I'm gonna try to. I'll probably see if I don't fall asleep tonight, I'm gonna watch it tonight.
Definitely. I don't know. Right now, I'm still scheduling my next one-on-one Friday situation. That's my little segment. That's what it's called, where I do the individual interviews with people. So I have the guest. I just have to, you know, cross some T's and dot some I's, and I'll probably definitely be back Friday. I did have some other stuff lined up, some mental health stuff, some birthright citizenship stuff that I have lined up as well that I don't know, I may end up pushing it back. Who knows? Because I've been, you know, going through some things myself. So I've just been trying to take my time and, you know, just ease my way back, you know, back onto the situation. But, you know, life goes on. So you got to keep pushing.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can watch it tonight and give some feedback.
I would really
we'll be able to connect through OTK or something like that, even if it take you a while to go live.
For sure. Thank you.
This is the freedom of the sister love us.
Oh yeah, but Mama said good night.
Yes, it's gonna be good night.
Bedtime. She get
Mama good night on us.
I'm gonna go back and watch this one too, so that way I can get
Freedom already knocked out. She was like, "I'm out, y'all." But yes, it was another good conversation. Dulcie, Nisha, did y'all want to say anything else before we shut it down?
No, I just want to shout out Charisse for the work that she been putting in, and your live on Bloodlines was really good, and I agree with you 1,000% on the Bloodlines thing. I really do. I just wanted to give you a flower, sis. You doing your thing.
Thank you so much, Nisha. I'm working out here. Shoot, it's definitely not easy. All the reading, all the researching and stuff, you know, it's definitely showing that it's coming out on the right side of things. So I'm just grateful. I'm just blessed. And I love doing this. It's important for our history. It's important for who we are as people. And we do got to get a better understanding. And it starts with us because we the ones that make the world go around, period. Okay.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Dulcie, any parting words?
Good night, y'all.
Short and sweet.
Short and sweet, but she ain't playing no games.
Okay. Make sure y'all appreciate
do it,
y'all the woman in your life. Sorry, Niche. Make sure y'all support the woman in your life. Treat the woman good on this good Mother's Day. If you still have, if your mother is still living, which is a blessing, or grandmother, auntie, enjoy yourself. Be safe. You know what I mean? And we love y'all and appreciate y'all support.
Yes. Good night, everyone.
Good night, y'all.
Yeah, good night, y'all.
Peace.
Peace. Oh hell, what is that? There you go.
I was about to ask.
What the hell's going on?
I was about to say, what is that?
Okay. Some electric guitar. Bye, Echo Walker, coward, bad saint, truth be told.
Unscramble your mind. Unscramble your mind. Unscramble your mind. Unscramble your mind. Stop wasting time. Unscramble your mind. Stop wasting time. Unscramble your mind. Stop wasting time. Unscramble your mind.
Unscramble minds. Unscramble minds.
Peace, y'all.